Good afternoon. Happy post-lunch. Actually, my talk is about a lot more than just angel investing. I'm really mostly going to focus on my work with Portland Seed Fund, which is a venture fund with an accelerator component, a lot like what you guys have formed and are talking about continuing to build out. And my goal is to share some examples from the Portland ecosystem, which, as so many people have pointed out, so many similarities to the opportunity with Reykjavik, that I can't even believe 2 to 3 years ago that we were in the same position, or earlier even, nobody really imagining that what's possible today would have been possible. So I'm hoping to give you guys some tangible examples of how you can move forward. We all get tired of hearing about Silicon Valley. They've been at it 50, 60 years. So how can we quickly manufacture a very robust startup ecosystem? So we're going to do it by building weeds and not orchids. Okay, so how did I even get here? You heard Helga earlier talk about Portland. I sat next to Tote at a Thai Oregon meeting. Thai is the Indus Entrepreneurs, really a great global organization, strong Portland chapter. Just happened to sit next to him while they were on their trip to check out Portland as a city. We got to be friends, got them to locate part of their operations there. Not long after, you've heard today, and you'll continue to hear about the Clada acquisition. Turns out Jive is a Portland company that has a little office in Silicon Valley, not the other way around. And I got to meet Gunnar and Jon in Portland about 2 weeks ago, again, to try to show them some of the better bars that we have in Portland. But most importantly, The Simpsons, right? Recently discovered Iceland, and Matt Groening is a Portlander, and Marge is a Norwegian-American, modeled after his mother, a Norwegian-American, and God rest her soul, she did just pass away 6 weeks ago. So, for Marge. Do you guys even watch The Simpsons here? Sure. Oh, okay. All right. So, what is Portland Seed Fund? I think it probably will bear some background just so you understand my perspective. So we operate Portland Seed Fund actually as a seed venture fund. It's got a mix of private and public investment. It started really 3 years ago was the idea with kind of a Bastille version started by entrepreneurs knocking on the mayor's door saying, instead of recruiting companies to form, to grow here, why don't we fund our own entrepreneurs? And that seemed like a radical notion at the time, but what happened is our mayor did respond and made available a $500,000 seed fund initially. This mayor was always out in front of his staff. The staff was running around like crazy trying to catch up. He announced it publicly before they actually talked about it. So there are some things to work out. But I kind of like that metaphor. It's not often where the government is ahead of the bureaucracy and the people. And in this case, sometimes that was what's required to get something done. So I'm going to infuse a few little tips in here for everybody in the audience who wants to build a stronger ecosystem. So the government tip is this. This is something I learned from our Portland government, who's been outstanding. They know the value of simply organizing something and getting out of the way. They don't over-control what gets invested in or the rules under the investment. And they understand that to do this right, they need to put private sector, they can enable and invest in an arm's length private sector way to do this. So that's the government tip. If anyone here is sitting there saying, how do we invest in startups? I'm happy to help and talk about that, by the way. So it was virtually unimaginable 2 years ago that we would continue to raise money. We raised a total of $3 million, which doesn't sound like a lot, but those of you who've raised money in Iceland, you might be thinking, whatever that number is, times 10 what you think you can do. That's what we were sitting there wondering in Portland, because there just weren't that many investors. There weren't that many exits. How are we going to start? Well, today, Portland Seed Fund has 36 investments. We ourselves have invested about 1.3 million of that, but our companies, more importantly, they're really good at attracting outside capital, because guess what? They have to be in Portland. We don't have that much native venture capital. But we also have a good airport, and it's a fun flight down to Silicon Valley. And it's not bad to Seattle either. So we train them how to go get money. So to date, our companies have raised $23 million in just 2 years. So it's, over $20 for every dollar that we've put in. We're really happy with that leverage. Of course, money raising alone isn't success. We have had 2 exits. We've had 1 write-off. We'll probably have a couple more write-offs in the next quarter because we're playing in a high-risk zone of early-stage investing. We try to let our investors know that up front, that just keeping the companies alive, that's not our success metric. So that's another government lesson. Be careful what you measure, because you might be measuring the wrong things to fuel the stage of growth that you're investing in. So make sure you understand it before you invest it and measure in it. So some of these names up here, does anyone recognize any of these companies? Raise your hand if you do. I've got Portfolio CEO Matt Ellis down here from Cloudability, great company. A lot of people here know about Cloudability. Obviously, we heard the Mobilitas story. Anyone know any of the companies beyond those? Good, okay. So see the infection, it's spreading. This is what we want. Okay, we Portland Seed Fund, and here's really the moral of the story, we did not do this alone. We happened to be in the right place at the right time at what was a burgeoning ecosystem with a lot of key players, much like you have here today. So we have Pi Incubator, another incubator. We don't see each other's competition. We collaborate mightily. In fact, many times we've invested in the same company. Actually, Cloudability is one of those examples. Sometimes I see a company that I don't think we can add value to, and I'll call Rick and say, this looks like your kind of deal, and you guys should take a look, and he'll do the same for me. Silicon Florist, great blog. You guys have Silicon Viking, right? I've seen something Silicon Viking. Is that here? Oh, it is? Oh, it's Bay Area Vikings. I'm also a Viking, so that caught my eye. But next time I'm going to sail here. Anyway, I think having that town crier who is monitoring the scene, spreading the good word on a daily basis, anytime there is any news. At the beginning, there wasn't a whole lot of news to spread with Silicon Florist. Now the job board, there's burgeoning job board. He can't keep up with the news. There's so much good news. But it started by telling whatever there was to tell, even if it wasn't much. I think that's a really great lesson. Obviously, there were other players as well. The Coopertition thing that we heard earlier from the Foundry guys, absolutely the case with Portland's success. And I will argue that with a small ecosystem, that collaboration is the glue. You don't have room for inefficiencies. You have to, if I meet somebody who is a great asset, but isn't a fit for me or my fund, I can't, lose that. I have to replug that person in to someone else in my ecosystem who can benefit. So that's how we all operate, and I think that's how we've created this unfair advantage in a fairly short time. Okay, so, the lesson there for entrepreneurs is to get in the game, for the ecosystem, is to collaborate and to not compete, right? So I know there's a lot of people in the audience who are here maybe representing a service organization that wants to help startups. So that's the thing. Don't try to be the one. Make it the many and help each other out. Okay, so 5 key lessons to learn to create an unfair advantage or shorten the time that this thing is going to take. Number 1, you've got to learn to command resources. So is anyone here a gardener? Can you grow anything here? Okay, some gardeners. Okay, this is one of the miracles of gardening. You take a legume and you roll it in this black powder called inoculant, and you then plant it. Well, that legume will now attract every bit of nitrogen that's floating around to its cause to establish nitrogen to its roots, and it will be far more productive than its neighboring plant. I use that as a metaphor for what we've done in Portland. We had to harness any passing asset we possibly could and drill it into the ground for our benefit to create this ecosystem quick effect. So, grab those resources. And by that, I don't mean expect people to deliver them to you. Go out and grab them. Create the ability to attract what you need for success. I think that's something we've done really well. Like I said earlier, we have to put our companies on airplanes. We don't spend a lot of time saying, gosh, venture is broken in Portland. It is broken. I don't see that changing. I mean, angel investment is where it's at. So we get on a plane. We go to them. It's not the end of the world, and it's working. Okay. Lesson 2, be bodacious. okay? One of the things I've learned by being here is it's a reminder that sometimes you don't begin at the beginning. You have to begin before the beginning, okay? So the pre-emergent state, which is how all ecosystems kind of start and coalesce. But once you're above ground, you are in the game, okay? Some of those sprouts are going to fail. Some are going to be bold and bodacious, but you got to get in the game. And by that, I also mean, to harken back to Helga's comments, she talked about the importance of networking, of putting yourself out there. It may be an unnatural behavior to start, but if it helps to think about it as you have something to offer that somebody else wants or needs, but they're not going to find out about it unless you say it out loud. And you're simply helping that connection happen better and quicker. So, you know, we try to teach that, actually, to our entrepreneurs. We have 200 people who've been through our program and received investment. And Helga reminded me that, yeah, there are aspects of it that's a little bit like a finishing school for entrepreneurs. Go say hello to the nice people. It's okay, they won't bite, you know, because a lot of tech people aren't that social, okay? So put yourself out there, be bodacious. Also, we talked a lot yesterday about failure. Well, you have to try to be able to fail. So that's why I say sometimes we have to begin before the beginning. It starts with just trying, getting in the game. And yeah, there are going to be failures, but when we talk about failures in the startup context, it's not that risky, okay? You've got small enterprises. You should be investing very small amounts of capital to get to proof points. You should get to quick go, no-go decisions. You know, if it doesn't turn out, you try something else. This is the land of ready, fire, aim, okay? Not ready, aim, think about it for a really long time, fire once and you're done, and then now you're exiled. Ready, fire, aim. You gotta be willing to fail. Anything you can do to model failure, like fail small, learn to enjoy that because it taught you something, pick up and move on armed with that knowledge. You know something that someone else next to you doesn't know. When we can sort of learn how to do that and model that, the ecosystem will rapidly build itself out instead of harboring those lessons and keeping them in. Okay. The third lesson, this is an ecosystem lesson. Monoculture? No. Monoculture introduces disease. You create issues. It's not as pretty to look at either. Intercropping or companion planting, back to the gardeners. We talked about some amazing creative inputs that the Iceland economy brings to the table, from fish to fashion, all of this. Similar to the sort of diversity we have in Portland. You know, create those mashups. The best things right now are happening at the edges, okay? The best things, kind of like John's talk. Don't worry about building out the core technology. Be a conduit into it. Be a creative conduit into it. And a lot of times that means you actually need to have a life, right? You actually need to do something interesting, to discover something interesting to bring to the table. Kind of like he was saying, think about what you build before you build it, or what do people really need? Turn off the stuff. Now what do you need? You know, that is a really, I thought, very provocative message. So as we're planning ecosystems, throw things together that you don't think go. Don't overbuild a one-hit wonder. See what happens when you mix it up. Okay, as you're building out the ecosystem, has anyone else noticing a trend that there's kind of an incubator bubble? Maybe not here yet, but anyone? It's like every day you hear about a new incubator, right? Some are better than others, but I will say this. I've worked with thousands of entrepreneurs. I've invested in 60 companies. People become who they should be in the process of getting there, not by being given it. Okay, we're now at the point where we have so many incubators and people perfectly housed, fed, watered. It's almost like a drip irrigation system on demand. Pretty soon they're going to have stadium pals. They won't even have to get up. They're going to be coding all the time. This is creating, in my opinion, this is a rot. Okay, we want to create, robust entrepreneurs who can attract the resource they need, and not just be given it or wait for it to come. So, no rot. no terrariums. That's why I say we want to grow reeds. It's maybe not as pretty, but you can count on the dandelion to self-propagate, to come up through the concrete, to actually even be edible, so it's even useful. Even if its end game doesn't work out, you can still eat the leaves. And the orchid, you know, you look at it the wrong way, the thing's going to die. So I noticed, like I said, I'm an avid gardener. I've probably spent way too long figuring out which to buy by seed packet, which to buy by Little Start, and you know all of that. But I enjoy it, otherwise I wouldn't do it. And I started to notice that the plants I bought at our sort of cheapo drugstore grocery, when I planted them, they always lived, and they were really, really hardy. And the ones that I would buy at the kind of fancy schmancy, you know, nursery, same plant, but just it had been kind of over-cared for, kind of helicopter parented. That thing died as soon as I planted it. And I've really mined that metaphor for a long time because I have kids, and I think a lot about how I raise my kids. My daughter's actually here, too, from Portland. I promised her she'd meet a real musician. But you know what? At the end of the day, we want whatever we plant to have a fighting chance. So we want to create resilience in doing something. Even if it fails, it'll be better the next time around. So weeds, not orchids. That is, by the way, weeds, not weed. That's Washington and Colorado, not Oregon. So. And I just want to end by saying thank you. This has been an amazing experience, an amazing opportunity. We welcome continued cross-fertilization between Iceland and Portland. If you have any questions, please feel free to come see me. I'm Angela. That's my contact information. And all you entrepreneurs, go forth and self-propagate. Thank you.